This reminds me, because sometimes certain cards don't pop up when you look up on the list when you're looking for stuff. But you get the idea. There's probably tons of cards that have similar effects to these effects, and that I might not know by name or couldn't get the search engine to search it properly. But anyway, these are reveal hand cards that will help you help you reveal what your opponent has in his hand. That way you gain that knowledge of what they have in their hands. It's very useful if you go first, you know what I mean, for example, so that you set up your field, boom, play this, now you have knowledge what your opponent has. Another good thing is what you can do is you can go first turn and try to get some of these monsters on the field or play some of these cards so you can gain the knowledge of what your opponent has or before you do anything. If in case your opponent has an MST, you might not want to set that one copy vanities right there and then, especially if you know for a fact they can't take full advantage of MST in your vanities. It's just that the fact that they can get rid of it could be, would be problematic because you want to save it for when you need it, right? As opposed to just using it early and then they just get down early or stuff like that. Especially when you have one copy of a card that you want to keep, you don't want it. You don't want to lose it, so you also don't want to end up in a scenario where you go first, set a whole bunch of cards, and your turn, then your opponent goes into a combo and wipes out your whole entire field. And it's like, man, I could have avoided this if I knew that he could do this. If I knew he had the play, he had the cards to hurt me. But anyway, as you can see, ceremonial bell. As long as this card remains face up on the field, both players must show their respective hands. Granted, you reveal your hand as well, but if you set your cards first and then play this, so that way you have no cards in your hand, or if you have one card in your hand like a monster and you don't care to show your opponent that you have it, you'll get more knowledge out of this card than they will, because you can control what they will know you have, as opposed to you definitely know everything they have in their hand. Because you go first, now you know what they have in their hand, so you know how to play around what they got. And plus, it makes the duel a little interesting, especially if you just automatically play this, show them what you got. Like, these are the cards I'm playing with, what you got. Oh, those are the cards you're playing with. Those cards don't beat the cards I got. That's all that matters to me. You know what I mean? You might know what I got, but you can't stop me. That type of stuff, right? Has 1850 defense, pretty decent. Could be better, right? Level 3 spellcaster with 0 attack is light. It has its uses, but mainly the ability to see what's in your opponent's hand is very useful. So that way you can make better plays, make better decisions, hesitate less, because if you know they don't have the mirror force, you're not going to hesitate. You're going to go for game. Common sense, right? The ability, obviously, knowing what your opponent has in the hand plays out more when you go first than when you go second. When you go second, they're more likely already going to play a lot of stuff. So seeing what is in their hand is not that big of a deal. It's more of a big deal if you go first. So these effects are more useful when you go first than when you go second. Mind on Ab. She's a dark spellcaster, level 6, 1000 attack, 600 defense. Your opponent must play with their hands revealed. The good thing about this card is you don't have to reveal your hand, only your opponent has to. Also to note is Ceremonial Bell is a spellcaster, and so is Mind of Air. So you can play Secret Village of the spellcasters. For those who don't know what it looks like. That's what it looks like. Secret Village is spellcaster. If you control spellcaster type monster, your opponent does not control one. Your opponent cannot activate spell cards. If you control no spellcaster type monsters, you cannot activate no spell cards. So make sure you have a spellcaster. Alright, so anyway, you get the idea. You can use that information, especially if you summon Ceremonial Bell and then you see your opponent has a whole bunch of spells. It's like, man, he has a whole bunch of spells. Alright, I definitely had to play Secret Village to shut that down, and then set some back row to protect your ceremonial bell, and boom, lock them out. See, that knowledge is very important. Alright, well, Mine on Air only makes it where your opponent has to reveal their hand, which is really good. Since this monster is dark and has 1,000 attack, you can use Mystic Tomato to summon it. You can, of course, summon it with Mausoleum Emperor by paying 1,000. There's a couple different ways you can summon it, and the art's pretty nice. But, you know, it's mainly just because of its effect. It's the usefulness, and it's something you want to play first turn. So there's that, right? Thousand Eyes Jellyfish, another card that has the effect that your opponent reveals their hand, so you don't have to reveal yours. The idea is for you to gain knowledge of what your opponent is playing, and for him not to have knowledge of what you're playing. But this card cannot be normal or set. This card cannot be special summoned except by trading 1 Ocean's Keeper. So if you manage to get this thing out by its summoning condition, good for you, right? These are not like must-have, cards that have these effects. Obviously a decent splashable card would be Ceremonial Bell, but if you just so happen to be able to play these, then you got the effect. Pot of Taboos. Pot of Taboos is pretty good. It has a couple options you could take advantage of, but its last effect is look at your opponent's hand and shuffle 1 card from it into the deck. Not only do you gain knowledge of what they have in their hand, you can also get rid of a card from their hand. So you can already get rid of something that would have been a problem. So that way, not just having knowledge of what they got, you can also get, you can also disrupt their plays. You can also prevent them from being able to take advantage of whatever advantage they might have had. Especially if the card you sent back to the deck is a 1 copy of like 1 Vanity or 1 Skill Drain or something like that, like getting rid of a card that they only had 1 copy of, like 1 Regeki, throw that back into the deck, right? Also forgot to mention, this is a 9-star, 3,000 defense, 2,000 attack, flip effect monster. So you gotta be able to flip it to get its effect. And there's 4 effects you can choose from, but the last one is the one you want for that knowledge of what your opponent has, as well as get rid of anything that could be dangerous to your health. Testalios, the Mega Monarch. You can tribute summon this card by tributing 1 tribute summoned monster. So you have to tribute a monster that you can tribute a monster that already was tribute summoned. So if you tribute summon a monster and then later on you could tribute that monster, summon this monster, right? Simple enough. When this card is tribute summoned, look at your opponent's hand and discard 1 card from their hand. Then if it was a monster card, inflict damage to your opponent equal to its original level times 200. That added ability of being able to discard 1 card from your opponent's hand and dealing damage is really good, but just the knowledge of looking at your opponent's hand, it's what we're trying to get. But the extra damage comes in handy. Machina Fortress, pretty good card, especially in the machine attribute deck. You can discard a machine type monster or monsters whose total levels equal 8 or more to special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. You can also use him as part of the cost. So since he's 7, you can discard him with a 1-star monster. You can special summon him, right? When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, select 1 card on the field your opponent controls and destroy it. But the effect we were interested in is when this face-up card you control is targeted by an opponent's monster's effect, look at your opponent's hand and discard 1 card from their hand. So anytime your opponent targets this monster with a card effect like 101, Sky Blaster, BLS, whatever, if they use a monster to target this monster with an effect, then you can use this monster's effect to look at your opponent's hand, gain that knowledge, and get rid of something that would be a threat to you. Amazon's Chain Master. This is a little bit more splashable, but you have to meet the certain requirement, which is when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can pay 1,500 life points to look at your opponent's hand, select 1 monster card in it, and add that card to your hand. So you're able to steal a monster from your opponent's hand, which is nice to reduce their resources, but the knowledge of what they have in their hand is worth the 1,500 life points you'll pay, as well as whatever battle damage you take from her battle. So let's see. So let's say hypothetically your opponent has Denko Seko first turn, they end their turn. Alright, you draw. You summon her, you attack with her, you take 200 damage, you pay 1,500, so 1,700 damage, you just took that turn, and now you can look in your opponent's hand, see that they got something in their hand. What could be useful in their hand? What could be useful in their hand? Let's say they have a that you can use. Let's say, I don't know, let's hypothetically say they got Max C or something. Right, so now you take the Max C. Now you got knowledge of what they have in their hand, and you know they could special summon. So then you'll try to take the, you'll take the Max C, and hopefully, let's say you have Gore's Battle Fate or whatever in your deck, or some type of battle stopper you can use from your hand, and then just, hope that things go your way. Let's see. You could take stuff like it depends what they have there. You could probably take a Veiler and then use Veiler on their Denko Seko or any of their monsters on their turn to reduce what they could do to you. The main thing is now you have knowledge of what they can and can't do, and you were able to steal something. Berline's the Firestorm Vassal. You can discard one card to special summon this card from your hand, but you cannot special summon a monster from your extra deck or for the rest of this turn. If this card is tributed for a tribute summon, you can look at your opponent's hand and banish one card from their hand until end of the turn. You can only use this effect once per turn. This is pretty good, obviously, in a Monarch deck or any tribute-based deck, or just, in general. Yeah. So, obviously, you'll special it by discarding a card, tribute it to summon a monster, like Jinzo or something, whatever, right? Whatever you summon. And then now you can look at your opponent's hand, banish a card until end of turn. Like, let's say they have a Battle Fader or something, you can banish it until end of turn so that we can get, your Jinzo to attack and deal some damage. Especially if it's game-winning damage, that's very important. But the knowledge that if they, of what they have in their hand is also useful. It's the whole point, right? The whole point is to know if they have any good cards in their hands that they can use against you, especially if you don't want to take the risk of playing any cards or overextending, summoning a couple extra monsters, You might want to avoid the risk of your opponent making a comeback. Neospatian Aqua Dolphin. Once per turn, you can discard a card, look at your opponent's hand, and choose one monster card in it. If you control a monster with attack greater than or equal to the attack of the chosen card, destroy the chosen card and inflict 500 damage to your opponent. Otherwise, you take 500 damage. Alright, the main thing is to gain some knowledge of what's in your opponent's hand, and it's worth, discarding a card and potentially taking 500 damage just to gain that knowledge, because now you know what he can and cannot do. Yeah, okay. Let's see, what is he? He's a warrior. So, see, he's a warrior, just like Amazon Chains Woman's a warrior, so you can use reinforcement of the army and add it to your hand. So it's easy to search this out. You can, like, first turn reinforcement, get Dolphin, summon Dolphin, pitch a card, whatever, maybe there is something you want in the graveyard, like a Treeborn Frog, I don't know, whatever you want to send to the graveyard. Now you can look at your opponent's hand, gain some knowledge of what they got, and then play your plays based off of that knowledge. Let's see, trying to figure out if there's anything else you can do since he's water, but the fact that he's a warrior is good enough. because you can use reinforcement. So it's the fact that you can kind of guarantee you can get him just like you can guarantee you get her by playing 3 reinforcement Armory. Clear world. The revealing hand part only applies if your opponent is playing light attribute monsters. So it's not something. This is not a card you could just play in any deck against any deck. It's specifically against light, but it does have the effect while this card is face up on the field. If a player controls a light attribute monster, that player plays with their hand revealed at all times. So gaining that knowledge is very important. You could, of course, play if you play a light attribute, which wouldn't be. This wouldn't really hurt you per se. Like if your opponent sees what's in your hand, it's not too big of a deal. One, you're gonna play this when you want to play this. But what I wanted to say was, if you have light attribute monsters in your deck, let's say you have a Veiler. So you summon the Veiler, right? You creature swap. Now your opponent has Veiler in attack mode, and then you have your opponent's monster. Then you play Clear World. Now you get to see what's in your opponent's hand, right? Like your opponent doesn't have to have light monster for this to be effective. Like at all, your opponent doesn't even have to have any of these attributes in their decks because of the fact that creature swap exists. You can just give them the card. You can give them a monster of the attribute. Like for example, Lava Golem is fire, so you can just tribute 2 monsters in your opponent's side field and give them Lava Golem. This is what creature swap looks like in case you don't know what it is. And in case you don't know what a Lava Golem is. And there he is. So he's a fire attribute. If you want to take advantage of the dark attribute aspect, Claws? No. Santa? Okay, Santa Claus. Like claws. Oh no, he's light attribute. So there you go. I thought he was dark. That light attribute thing does make a difference. So for example, as you can see, tribute a monster on your opponent's side of the field, give them Santa Claus, play Clear World. Now you have knowledge of what they have in their hand. Simple enough. So that's pretty interesting. Really thought he was dark, but the idea is to see what's in his hand, right? So him being light actually benefits us. So you can get rid of something they have on their field that might be problematic. Give them this, play this, and now you know what they have in the hand, what they can and cannot do. And you play around that. Moving on, drag down into the grave. You and your opponent look at each other's hands, select 1 card from each other's hands, discard them to the grave, and each player draws a card afterwards. Granted, your opponent gets to see what's in your hand, but since you can set a couple cards prior to activating this card, you'll gain more knowledge from what your opponent has than he gets from you. But the cards that y'all draw, the 1 card y'all draw after this effect resolves, it's the only mystery, right? The only mystery. But you already gained enough knowledge to know if your opponent, has cards that's a threat or not. And you were also able to get rid of any of them that immediately was a threat. Like let's say they had a dark hole. It's like, oop, discard that. Definitely discard that. Finishing Mirror. Useful against, a spirit type deck, a deck that has spirit monsters, but you don't need to use this against a spirit deck. Like you could just play this against any deck. Its first effect, its effect is look at your opponent's hand. That's it. Period. And then select and discard 1 monster to the graveyard if spirit monsters exist in their hand. So they don't have to have spirit monsters there. But if they do have spirit monsters in their hand, send it to the grave. So that's very useful. But the main part is look at your opponent's hand, which is the only thing really you need. So this is a really good generic splashable card. You don't have to put monsters in your deck, or it's a spell card. You could just throw it in there. You could throw this in, in anywhere. Like let's say your opponent, let's say hypothetically, you go up against a deck that doesn't have a lot of spells and traps, just has a lot of monsters. So you don't need your MSTs. You could take out your MSTs and put this in, side it out and put these in. That way, if you go first, bang. Even if you don't go first, just the fact that your opponent might play a couple cards and still keep a couple cards in their hands, you know, the ability to draw and then be like, all right, let me play this, play the mirror, look at your hand. Now I got some knowledge. Now I know what you can and can't do based off of what's in your hand, and you know, play around with that knowledge. So just knowing what they have in their hand is all you really wanted, and you don't have to use up normal summons. You don't have to use monster slots, blah blah blah. So I'm definitely a fan of that card because it's just nice and simple. Your opponent doesn't know what you got in your hands because you don't have to reveal your hand. You just look at their hand. Smoke Grenade of the Thief. It's a decent card. It's an equipped card, so it has potential. You could search it out with certain cards. You can recycle it because, you know, whatever, because it's an equipped card, right? There might be many ways that you can recycle this card and use it over and over again. When this equipped spell card is active and is destroyed by a card effect, that means when it has to be equipped to a monster, it has to still be on the field, right? It can't be like you activate it to equip it to a monster and your opponent changes MST. You won't get this effect. It has to be active. That means it has to have resolved for it to be active. Anyway, when it is popped, look at your opponent's hand, select one card from their hand, and discard it to the graveyard. You know what I mean? So it's not that different from drag down to the grave, except you don't have to give up, you know, knowledge of what you have in your hand, as well as you have to worry about them discarding something from your hand. So the ability to just see what's in the hand. A way you can get this effect off is using Gear Frame. Doubtful you'll Gear Fried, I should say. Yeah, doubtful you'll use him, but if you do, so be it. As you can see, he's a warrior, so you can reinforce him to your hand, so you can so you can make the combo consistent. Because you can add him with reinforcement in Armory, and you can add this with hidden Armory. There it is. You can add this to your hand from the deck with hidden Armory, so this combo could be consistent. You know, especially if you want to do a first turn play. It's not the greatest combo in the universe per se, but it is a very useful combo nonetheless. Because being able to summon Gear Fried, equip them, now the card is active, then Gear Fried's effect kicks in, he destroys any equipped card that is equipped to him, and then this effect will kick off. You know, this Smoke Grenade's effect will kick off, and now you can look at your opponent's hand and get rid of one of those cards in the process. Exchange of Spirits. This will give you knowledge. Again, you can control it because you can make it where you have one card in your hand. Let's say you have a Dark Magician and you play a lot of cards, you set a lot of your cards, right? You play this and all you have is a Dark Magician, right? As an example, your opponent's gonna take Dark Magician, so they're gonna have to deal with playing that or having that in their hand as a dead draw. And then you get to look in their hand and take any good card in their hand. Not only does this give you the ability to take something like an MST, a Raigeki, you know, anything, Mirror Force, anything useful, which is really good, right? Like, just think about going first and taking your opponent's Vanity's Emptiness. He just sided it in against you so he can beat you, and you stowed it. Oh my god, that's delicious. So, yeah, you know, being able to steal your opponent's outs and use it against them, you know, it's just amazing. If you're playing the cross, for example, you can, like, I don't know, grab like there something that will let you Digin lock, or just like, this is really good in mirror matches because, you know, obviously y'all gonna have a lot of the same stuff in y'all decks, so this kind of doubles as anything you can think of. But this is just good in general, where, you know, you go first turn and you take some, like, I've taken some good stuff with this. Like, this is definitely one of my favorite old school cards. I also like the fact that it was originally secret. You know what I mean? That's the rarity it came in. And if I'm right, it hasn't been reprinted. It only comes in that one rarity, which is secret, so it's nice and smexy. But also, you know, it makes it really, really rare. And the fact that it hasn't been reprinted, people don't seem to value the card like they should. It is a really great card, especially in mirror matches. Mirror matches do happen. I don't know why no one's even considering this card for that. I did see one time there was a spellbook deck that was running it, and it's like, duh. Surprised it didn't get used that much. You know, spellbook would have won Worlds that time, where spellbook was going up against Dragon Rulers. What was that, 2013? I think it was something like that. Would have won if they had exchanged, because they could have stole the card destruction or whatever. They could have stole any card that would have given them, advantage, like steal your opponent's vanity's emptiness or whatever. Anyway, it's a really good card. Again, you get to control essentially what your opponent's going to get, because you're going to make it where you give them something they can't really use per se. You know what I mean? You give them something that's useless to them, but it's very useful to. Has use for you. You know what I mean? Or you can just play it right and have a field spell. It's like the field spell benefits me anyway. Here, you want to activate Clear Will? You're just giving me the advantage, because that's all I wanted was Clear Will. Or let's say you play this and the card in your hand was Fusion Gate, right? In case you don't know what it looks like, Fusion Gate. All right, so you got Fusion Gate. Both players can use the effect of Fusion Gate. So boom, you give it to him, and if he ever activates it, you just benefited anyway. So you really didn't lose anything. Another thing you can use with exchange is if you give them a spirit monster, because anytime they summon that spirit monster will return to the original owner's hand. So you'll just get the monster back. So stuff like that. Exchange is even useful if you want to give somebody like an MST, right? Play it, give them MST, and take something good, and then end your turn, and then they're like, all right, now just use MST your face down. Haha, it's an artifact monster. You mad, right? I can go on and on of the different things you can do with it. The idea is, it's a good card. Try it out. It's more than just gaining hand knowledge of what your opponent has in their hands. It's the fact you can literally take something from their hand and use it against them. Use their own monster against them. Because imagine you play this first turn and you take their Denko Sekko. It don't even matter if they take your Mirror Force. You took their Denko Sekko. Now they sick. You'll play Denko Sekko, and now they're dead, right? As an example. Take their Fossil Diana, Maxi, whatever. Baylor, I don't care. Dark Hole. Anyway, going on. Spiritual Water Art. A really good card. Obviously, there's some really good water attribute decks that can run this. You can run this with just Treeborn Frog. You can run this with, anything that has slight attribute. You can even, obviously combo it with Neospatial and Aqua Dolphin if you want. Use his effect to gain some knowledge of what's in your opponent's hand. Right? Well, technically you don't need to, because what's the point, right? Just summon him and then just use this on it, and you get the knowledge anyway, and then get rid of a card. But you get the idea. Is the fact that you can combo it with a water attribute monster. Say you have a water attribute monster that can mill the top card of your opponent's deck or something, and then use this to look at their hand and mill something from their hand. Anyway, point is, tribute a water monster, look at your opponent's hand, and send one card from their hand to the graveyard. It's send, not discard, so Dark World monsters will not get their effects. So that's pretty good to keep in mind. And it's a kawaii card, right? It's pretty good. I'm definitely a fan of it. That knowledge is useful. Not only is the knowledge useful, it's the fact that you can definitely get rid of something. Your opponent's top decking, boom, boom, you use this, take advantage of that. If your opponent, you definitely want to shut down any possible plays. That's the whole idea of gaining knowledge of what they have in their hands, is for you to take advantage of that knowledge. So being able to gain knowledge so you can take advantage of and get rid of something, it's just beautiful. Now this is a good card that is similar to Spiritual Water Art, but a little bit more generic. It costs some life points. You have to review your hand as well, so you're giving up knowledge of your hand, but you get to look at your opponent's hand and select one card and remove that card from play until the end phase of your opponent's next turn. Not this turn, next turn. So you can get rid of something for 2 turns. You know what I mean? So that ability to look at your opponent's hand, gain some knowledge, get rid of something for 2 turns is really useful. I noticed a lot of people are starting to talk about this card. It's about time people caught up to how useful this card is, because I always thought it was a little weird. It's like, wait, y'all willing to pay half your life points for Silent Judgment, but won't pay 2,000 for this? Y'all willing to pay 2,000 for Warning, but won't pay 2,000 for this? You know what I mean? Like, it's like 2,000 is not that big of a deal, especially when you have life gaining capabilities. The ability just to see what your opponent has, like the ability to activate this when your opponent draws. Look at the hand, see that they have the Denko Sekko, and get rid of it for 2 turns. that matters. That makes a difference. I'll sacrifice 2,000 life points for that, and the knowledge of what is in my hand, because all my point's gonna see is that I'm going to go for game. Anyway, moving on. Light of Judgement. If the Sanctuary of the Sky is on the field doesn't have to be on your side field, it just has to be on the field, period. You can activate this card by discarding one light monster from your hand to the graveyard. Choose one card your opponent controls and one in their hand. You can look at their hand in order to choose a card in their hand and send it to the graveyard. So the knowledge, again, you get to see what's in their hand. Then you get to choose a card in their hand and a card on the field and get rid of those cards. Right? Send, not discard. So Dark Worlds won't get their effects, right? So very useful. You have to discard a light monster, but if you're playing Baylor, not a big deal. If you're playing this in a fairy deck, you know, artifact deck, whatever, Bujan deck, and you just I don't know why you're playing Sanctuary, right? But of course you're probably playing Sanctuary just so you can activate this. The idea is that if you can play this, it's a good card to play because of its effect. It gives you knowledge of what's in your opponent's hand, as well as you get rid of some stuff in the process. But if for some reason, you know, let's say you play Bujans and your opponent just so happens to be playing a fairy deck, you know, like a agent deck, and they have Sanctuary of the Sky, it's like you can side in the Light of Judgment and, you know, take advantage of that. Like, ooh, good looking for playing that field spell, because now I got this card that can be activated when you have the field spell. Discard any of my, you know, Bujan, turtle, whatever, you know what I mean, and gain the effect and start derping. Mind Hexor, it has the ability to let you see what's in your opponent's hand as well as what they have set on the side of the field for the cost of 500 life points. The main thing is to be able to see what's in their hand so you can gain that knowledge to take advantage of if you go first, of course. Odin's Eye, pretty much the same thing, but you need one of the synchros on the field to gain this effect and activate it during either player's standby phase. They get the effect of the Aesir monster, and then look at all cards in your opponent's hand and all set cards they control. Cards and effects cannot be activated in response to this effect's activation. It's not generic per se because you have to have Aesir, which means this only really truly works in a Nordic deck, but it's still a good card nonetheless because of the information you gain from this card. That knowledge is very useful, you know, in games and competitiveness. Something that is generic, and it's now to me it's more in the realm of Upstart Galvin, because I never liked the idea of my opponent gaining life points just to gain that knowledge of what they have in their hand. A card I could use instead, of course, is Respect Play, so that way I don't have my opponent doesn't gain no life. I can gain the knowledge that they have of what they have in their hand, but in the process they get to see what's in my hand. That's the slight difference. That's the trade-off, is they get to see what's in my hand. So as long as this is on the field, both players have to show what they got, as it were. But it's pretty cool. Knowledge is still important, especially if you have knowledge that you have the advantage and your opponent does not, then you just take advantage of your advantage instead of hesitating, right? Eye of Truth. As long as this card remains face up on the field, your opponent must show his or her hand, right? You don't have to show yours. Your opponent increases his or her life points by 1,000 life points at each of his or her standby phases if he or she has a spell card in his or her hand. And typically everybody plays spells, unless they're playing like Chain Burn or something, where they typically play a lot of traps, or a monster-based deck. They're going to have spells, so they'll gain 1,000. Obviously, something you can do is not activate this on the draw phase. That'd be stupid, because then on standby phase they'll gain 1,000. Play this after their standby phase. Play this on their main phase, so that way you can see what's in their hand and they don't gain 1,000. And of course, you could always get rid of this with like a card effect, MST or something. But because typically you just want that, you just need the knowledge that one time. You just need to see what they have that one time. So you could play this to see what they have, you know, in their hand before they set anything, right? Even if you chain this on their standby phase, like they draw, you'd be like, oops, standby phase, boom. oh, you have a spell, gain 1,000, good for you. But now I have this knowledge. All right, you play those cards. All right, that's cool. My turn. Play Planter. Magic Planter. Play Magic Planter. Send it to the graveyard. Draw 2 cards, and then, you know, proceed to beat face, because now you have the knowledge. You don't need any more per se. You don't need to know what's the next cards they're drawing. But if you do, Eye of Truth is a good card to have and keep, because constant knowledge is better than temporary knowledge, right? Respect play. If you have no problem showing your opponent what you got, then this is a better option than Eye of Truth, because you don't have to get rid of it. You could just leave it there and have that knowledge every turn. But also you have to remember your opponent has knowledge as well, so it just comes down to who is better at taking advantage of that knowledge, right? And we have a Synchro. Under the right conditions, you can once per turn activate this control. If your opponent controls a face-up like monster or monsters, you can activate one of these effects. The effect you want to activate is the last one, which is his third effect, which is send all cards in your hand to the graveyard to look at your opponent's hand, and send all light monsters in their hand to the graveyard. Then inflict damage equal to your opponent to the total attack of the opponent's monster sent to the graveyard. Really good card. You could just OTK with that under the right conditions, of course. But what you're gonna want to do is make sure you only have like 1 card in your hand. You don't want to discard all your good cards, right? Play some of your cards, and then make him, and then use him. Send that 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, and then look at their hand. They don't have to have light monsters in their hands for you to activate this effect. They just have to have light monsters on their side of the field. So you activate it, look at their hand. Now you gain some knowledge. If they just so happen to have light monsters in their hands, then those light monsters go graveyard, and then they take damage for that. So it's really good, especially if you can go first turn and apply this effect. You know, make him first turn, use this effect first turn against a blue gem deck, an artifact deck, light sworn deck, any other light attribute decks, Satellar Knights, so forth and so forth. And this is a really good card, especially against them. And it would be nice. No, it won't work first turn. I forgot. The idea is that they have to have a light monster, so you have to make sure you can put a light monster on their side of the field. If you want to do this first turn, you gotta put a light monster on their side of the field. There's technically a couple ways of doing it. I don't know. Okay. She Inspire. Alright. She Inspire. Select 1 face-up monster on your side of the field to activate this card. Until the end phase of this turn, shift control to select monster point. So you can play this, give your opponent a light monster like Veiler or something, doesn't matter. Give him a light monster, and then, you know, go into your little synchro play. Make your decisive arms, and then boom, look at your opponent's hand. Any light monsters, send them to grave. So again, you know, it's just about how you build your deck, and if you want to exploit this powerful effect, then so be it. Go for it. And that's the end of the video.